we're going to talk rugby now. Here is Johnny Sexton explaining why he decided to go for the try with James Lowe instead of taking the 3 points before half-time in Saturday's win.
Because you celebrated the try like no other that I've seen you in the past. You almost jumped onto the head of James Lowe. There seemed to be a real feeling that it was a key moment in the game.
I think that just shows what I think of James Lowe. It was, look, in big games and big finals, you know, you got to try and score tries to win. You know, if we go in at half time and it's 17-11, you know, it's a one score game. Whereas if you score a try, you know, we've done it other times this season. I remember Glasgow away, we did it. There's other games, England obviously in stoppage time. The lad, I wasn't on the pitch, but the lad scored just before half time. It's a massive impact on the game, and obviously then straight after half time we had quite a simple penalty, and we decided to go for the scrum and really try and put the foot on the throat. And you know, we had a good move set up and we just got the ball stripped from us. So it's all outcome based. Your decision's only as good as the outcome, but we're delighted that you know, some of the decisions paid off today.
Andy Dunne, good morning to you.
Hi Ger, how are you?
I think from their perspective it was important that they did this double, because there's a kind of sense of deflation if you win the European Cup and then don't back it up a couple of weeks later, or the following week and the week after, as it is in this case. Just in previous years when they won the European Cup and they've been beaten, it's been like, well, that was just a little kind of, I wish they'd managed to see that out there, and they did.
Yeah, Owen Redden spoke a few weeks back about the hurt he felt losing to Munster a week after a Heineken win. And it does sit with these players. They do have serious issues with losing finals. McIntyre spoke on Saturday, you know, surmising would it really hurt them if they lost, having won Europe. And I suppose we were surmising, we weren't sure. The way they played on Saturday, I was surprised by. I thought they were fatigued going into the game. I thought they were going to be more tired. I thought they were just going to try and hang in there with Scarlets and squeeze it with penalties. But again, they stepped up to the mark, you know, brilliantly.
Yeah.
I don't know where they got the energy levels from. At the tail end of the season, we watched their warm up. They started the warm up at about 5:43 for a 6 o'clock kickoff, and to me that just showed they were literally trying to conserve every last ounce of energy they had, and just try and bring whatever energy levels they could to the game just for that 80-minute period. So Scarlets were warming up from about 5:10.
Yeah.
So you know they literally tried to just conserve as much energy as possible.
It worked pretty well for them. Let's talk about Jordan Larmour, because this time last year I don't think anybody really understood exactly what Jordan Larmour was, and over the last few months there's been a sense that, well, okay, he's capable of showing us in flashes exactly. That's it. His debut for Ireland, winning the European Cup, and then with the European Cup and the Pro 14, that's himself imported the whole way through the season. Not a bad year for them, really.
Yeah, it's an amazing picture to see it like that.
But the flash of genius is the thing, that it was great to see that it hasn't come out of him in any way. That he was getting the ball in space in the last couple of weeks. He was getting the ball in no space in the last couple of weeks, and you would kind of see him accelerate into the contact, but it was still a contact and he was still coming down, and you're like, okay, that's just what's going to happen. The opposition gets tape and they work him out, and then boom.
Well, yeah, I mean, they all analyse each other to the nth degree now. So, but I actually think the way Leinster have played in previous weeks, where Larmour was running into traffic, that was more indicative of the Leinster game slowing down a bit, and I think the engine wasn't purring as we've come to expect. And I think when he got the ball, there were no soft shoulders to attack. There was no space being created for him on that inside. There was a lot more space created on Saturday, and then I think that little bit of magic he has, we saw it with Carbery too when he set up that last try, Jack Conan's try. It's so important that these players don't get it coached out of them, because it's very, very easily done in modern rugby. It can be a joyless profession at times on a weekly basis. The amount of physical contact they're going through, the amount of preparation and analysis.
Well, if you'd knocked it on, right?
Yeah.
There's very few coaches in the world who go, that's okay, do it next time, get it right.
Absolutely.
Most coaches are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are?
But then again, it's lovely to see that a guy who's, again, is so young and new to the scene had the confidence to try it.
Yeah.
How hard is that?
It's extremely hard at the pace he was running. It's okay at a slowed down. the only it's obvious comparisons to O'Driscoll. And I think we've seen Ringrose do it maybe once as well, but there's not many others can do it. Shane Horgan, I had heard a playback on the Sky Sports commentary, and they had referred to, that's Horgan in his prime, and he just laughed. He said, I could never do that, which I never saw him do either at 6'4", and certainly not travelling at that speed. And he had a superb career and decorated career, but it's just really nice to see young players in an Irish setting on the tail end of such a successful year, but having the confidence to do that in a cup final when, like you said, if he was to slow it down and assess the risk of picking it up one-handed full pace, maybe in a couple of years he won't be doing that because life will have beaten him down, but hopefully not.
Is it better than the try against Munster?
No, I don't think so. I think the amount of work he had to do in front of him in the Munster game was he had a little more work to do, but probably in terms of being opportunistic, in terms of reading the situation where he caught the ball facing in the opposite direction, but it did seem like he had the awareness that if he kicked infield, he knew there was space there. That split-second decision making, that augurs well.
Yeah, and it's a bigger stage, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Feels like a cup final.
It wasn't at Christmas. Everybody in Munster was like way down with Turkey at that point.
Yeah. That was their excuse. Yeah.
You mentioned Joey Carbery's bit of magic. I was delighted for him as well because obviously he's been under a bit of pressure, and by all accounts the constant talk about him, which we're obviously part of feeding, has been weighing him down, but he didn't play like it when he comes off the bench, and it would be easy for that. Like, again, his form hasn't been amazing while all this has been going on, but there hasn't been huge opportunities for him, so it was great that everybody could see this is why there is such talk about him. A little quick acceleration and then a beautiful pass inside, and suddenly Jack Conan is racing free to score.
Well, he can do things that other out-halves can't do. And while Ross Byrne has been favoured ahead of him, Ross Byrne couldn't do what Joey did in that split second, and actually Johnny Sexton can't do it either. It's just not what Johnny's strengths are. His strengths are very different, but that capacity to stand up an international centre one-on-one, he feinted, he delayed, and then he had a change of pace. It was sublime, and his pass back inside was, I think, could have been called for forward, but it was his awareness of where his support runners were. I mean, lots of guys are explosive enough in midfield to suss out a little bit of space and create it for themselves. There are people who can do that. There are very few who can do that and then convert that line break into a score. And almost always his conversion rate for line breaks in terms of what actually come into goes directly to being a score or an assist for a score. He did it in the Fiji game back in November, where he did a very sharp little line break and it resulted directly in a try. I was delighted because he's in danger of falling between stools. He's in danger of, is he a fullback, is he an out-half? I think he's very much an out-half, and I'd love to see him continue there, where we're all speculating about, but I'd love to see him get more time at 10.
Let me play you this. It's Johnny Sexton talking about the situation with Dave afterwards.
Yeah, look, I think he's surrounded by some good people with his dad, and I think with the management here I've looked after him, and he's been able to call on some experienced guys as well to look for some advice. But look, I have felt for him with all the speculation. Sooner, from his point of view and from everyone's, I'm sure the sooner a decision is made, the better for everyone involved. And he's obviously a teammate and friend first and foremost. He's competition as well.
You'd be delighted to see him go.
I just said that there as a joke. Look, he's whoever he ends up with. I hope it's here, but whoever he does end up with, he'll be a great asset for wherever he ends up. He's obviously so talented and so versatile, and he's got a little bit of everything. You saw the footwork he did for the try, and that's what he's capable of. So wherever he ends up, like I said, he's going to be a massive asset.
It's such a weird story, isn't it? Like, it's such a weird thing that this exists in Irish rugby, that we're like...
I think in hindsight, if Schmidt and Nucifora maybe could do it differently, and maybe there was no leak of how that got out. I mean, if it was done behind closed doors, it'd been a lot neater for everybody. My own view is that he should stay in Leinster, and despite the fact he won't get as many games at 10, he will. Johnny is not going to be playing every game next year. I think he's got the capacity to do what he did on Saturday on a regular basis. His first European start at 10 for Leinster was about 2 seasons ago against Montpellier. It was either against Racing Club or against Montpellier in a group game, and he beat 11 defenders in his first ever game starting as a 10. And while that might not be your number one role as an out half, your job is to distribute to others. If you've got a guy in that scenario who can beat 11 players on a one-on-one basis, you're going to create so much for your team. And I think what I mentioned previously there was that he doesn't just make line breaks that don't result in anything.
Yeah.
The play never breaks down after he makes a line break. He almost always creates a link up or an assist for a try. And the way defences are so well tuned now, a guy who can do that and a guy like Larmour out wide who can do that, they're invaluable. And I think patience, learn from Johnny again. He's still only, what is Joey? 20?
He's 22, he'll be 23 in November.
You're probably going, Johnny didn't start for Leinster until he was about 25, 26.
Are we forgetting about Johnny in terms of the way it can go in terms of having that person behind him? Because Johnny Sexton is going to be Ireland's starting out half in the World Cup. When you think about it from a Joe Schmidt perspective, maybe he wants Johnny Sexton to keep upping his game because he's got Joey Carbery, he's got one of the best out halves in the Northern Hemisphere chasing him down. Have we forgotten about this angle entirely, that maybe it's best for Johnny Sexton if Joey Carbery stays at Leinster?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't really been discussed, but he did mention it in his interview. I mean, he's naturally enough, he's going to feel a little bit of pressure when a guy can do that behind him. So it's probably a really good way of looking at it, yeah, from Joe's point of view. Although it doesn't appear he is looking at it like that. He's very much looking at, and I think at this stage now it's become a battle of wills. And I'd be surprised if Joey doesn't move on, because Joe tends to get what he wants.
Yeah, not always necessarily the right thing though, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's the right thing. I think Joey Carbery should stay in Leinster. Yeah.
I think, anyway, it's a story that
go around and around about it, and I would like to see.
It looks like this week it'll be decided.
Yeah, some closure on it.
Talking about it. Yeah. Well, it was interesting that the papers are reporting that Van Graan actually has met him and has made the pitch from Munster's perspective. Like, I don't know what Van Graan's attacking philosophy is. I don't know if he's gonna continue to be encouraged to beat defenders. You would hope that that's what Van Graan is sitting down and saying, okay, this is how we're going to play, this is what our style is, this is how I see you fitting into that. You know, and I'm not guaranteeing you first choice. If Tyler Blendell comes back, it's a competition, and whoever wins. But
yeah, well, you'd like to think it won't be coached out of him, but lots of coaches really want their 10 to be an executive guy on the field, to be very cool, calm and collected, and to use everyone else around him to the best degree. And very often with prescriptive coaching and patterned rugby, your 10 isn't given the green light to just be an attacking force himself. I think that would be a terrible shame if that was the case with Joey Carbery. Bowden Barrett gets given that green
Bowden
light.
Barrett keeps getting mentioned, like in dispatches from Leinster, when they're talking about what they see in Joey Carbery's future, and it's like, we're going to let a player like that go?
Yeah.
No way.
They shouldn't. And Graham Henry came over to Leinster a couple of years ago, and in pre-season apparently just earmarked Joey Carbery within minutes and said, look no further than him, lads. He was in an advisory capacity with Leo, and it was before the arrival of Lancaster, and he immediately said, build your game around a guy like that. And that shows the New Zealand attitude to a guy of his talent.
There's your 10 for the next decade, is what he said. He's like, oh no, we've got to send him down to Munster because they couldn't get their shit together to get their own 10, basically.
Well, stop looking at me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, we've only got 5 minutes left here, Andy. We've got to get through a couple of key things for you. Adrian Barry was saying that did he say it was the greatest sports team in the world, potentially ever? Yeah, you know.
A little bit of hyperbole there, maybe.
There might have been a few sherries at lunchtime. Like Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls, the Barcelona team of Pep Guardiola. There's a few that are up there.
Belichick's Patriots, probably
Belichick's
better.
Patriots. Certainly the first one that won the first three. But are they even the best Leinster team? There's definitely a question of whether or not the first team. Here's their incredible team. We've never seen the like in any sport, possibly. Superb day.
What time was that? Post match?
Post match.
Yeah, okay.
After the trophy celebration.
Had a few beers, maybe.
You get I was thinking about it afterwards, though, because obviously he got a bit of blowback from people on Twitter, as you do.
Yeah.
But the first team is the first team, right? And
yeah.
they climb the mountain first, and so therefore everybody who comes afterwards, there is a path worn for them. Plus, the first team had Rocky Elsom, and
yes.
Rocky Elsom, it's like that Rocky Elsom is potentially one of the greatest seasons that anybody's ever had in the sport ever.
Yeah, I think
since we're going with the hyperbole here,
I think he got 12 Man of the Match awards in 15 European games, something like that. Are they the greatest? Leinster team is probably a fairer question.
They're pretty close to it,
to tone down from Adrian's quote. I think it's a fair argument to ask, are they the best Leinster side? I think I would say they're the best Leinster squad. I don't think Leinster have ever had that many internationals, followed by that many really good near internationals next in line. They used 55 players in the Pro 14 this year. It's an outrageous amount of players to be able to call on, and very few of those people let them down on any occasion. So even when you reflect on, have there been many kind of individually poor performances across the whole breadth of a season? There's probably one or two you could recall, but it's difficult. I think without doubt they've got the biggest and strongest overall squad that Leinster have ever assembled.
Yeah.
But are they the greatest starting 15? I'm not sure.
The team that wins against Leicester in 09, the back line is Chris Whittaker at 9, Sexton at 10, Luke Fitzgerald at 11, Darcy and O'Driscoll at 12 and 13, Shane Horgan at 14, and Ethan Nasewa at full-back. That's a shit-hot team.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty incredible lineup. When you hear it like that.
On the bench is Rob Kearney and Gervin Dempsey. Sean O'Brien also on the bench. Devin Toner on the bench.
Yeah. So I think, we probably, if we were to pick, put the two sides from Saturday out together and see who would you pick from that, I wouldn't venture too far away from that back line you just announced.
Yeah, now it is Johnny Sexton as a young player who hasn't yet reached the level that he's at. That Johnny Sexton is probably not a million miles ahead of where Rob
Johnny Sexton wouldn't have started either had Felipe got injured. And to his great credit, nailed the drop goal from the halfway line and just owned that final in a way you never have expected a guy just coming in. So he laid down his marker in a very, very certain and definitive way in 09, and it's other than that though, I don't think you wouldn't be dropping Darcy and O'Driscoll either, would you?
No, definitely not. The front three is Cian Healy, Bernard Jackman, Stan Wright. It's Leo Cullen and Malcolm O'Kelly in the second row, and then it's Rocky Elsom, Shane Jennings and Jamie Heaslip. So it's pretty close.
Yeah, very. If hearing it read out like that, I'd actually say they're probably a stronger side.
Yeah, sorry Adrian.
Maybe he was referring to that team. Maybe he was looking at the Hall of Fame and was like, this Leinster team.
Pretty sure he said ever in the world.
He did, yeah. Ever. Apparently Stephen Jones, I never read Stephen Jones. I'm blocked by him on Twitter, so I don't know what the hell he said, but apparently Saracens are better than Leinster.
Yeah, he blocked a friend of mine on Twitter as well who took him to task. Quite how he arrived at that 3 weeks after they got hockeyed by Leinster in the European quarter-final is an interesting one.
Good man, Stephen Jones.
Yeah. Well, I suppose he's got to put stuff in print. But Saracens are an excellent side, but I can't agree that
the bit where they play each other is kind of a decisive.
Yeah, particularly that was 3 weeks ago. I mean, if it was a year ago and you could say, well, back then Leinster were at a different level, it was 3 weeks ago, so he's wrong.
Yeah. All right. Was there one other thing that we need to talk about, or was that it? That was it. An amazing season. We kind of take it for granted when it gets to this good.
Yeah, well, it's. I don't think we've never had a season where we've won.
No, everything.
Everything, yeah. No. It's maybe our best season ever, as Adrian Berry might say.
One final point. Everybody's talking about, I made this earlier, about James Ryan never having lost a game, but it was an unbeaten season for Johnny Sexton, for Tyke Furlong, for Robbie Henchon. There was somebody else, apologies, whoever they were mentioning, but somebody else was pointing that out from Leinster.
They didn't actually lose a game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So whenever they played, the team won.
Yeah.
In all the games that they played in, including for Ireland. So
yeah, that's pretty special.
So not bad at all.
Yeah, an invincible year.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Chair.
All we have to do now is roll over the Aussies in 3 tests, and well, then this is definitely rugby country.
Yes.
Shane Stapleton's outside, so we can bring that up to him in a minute. Thanks a million, Andy.
Cheers, Chair.
See you again real soon.